All right. Good afternoon, or good evening, or good night, everybody. It is great to be here. Glad to be here. This is an excellent, awesome occasion. I think for this stream, it's going to be a bit of more of a chill hangout stream, just because it's a celebration stream. It's an AMA stream. So let's get the news out of the way, right? We have officially hit 2K on Twitter in terms of our follower count. 2K. What an achievement. I don't know why people actually follow me on Twitter. To be honest, uh, Twitter is like not a serious venue for me and never has. It's always been just the place where everybody seems to coordinate and talk. And of course, there are other Twitter personalities on there, like there's Aaron McIntyre and BAP and things, people like that. So yeah. So let's see. Where are the comments here? Yes. Okay. No comments as of yet. All right. Well, if you have questions, please let me know. Links should be in the chat. So if you have anything to donate, I don't usually run entropy on this chat. So if you're a new subscriber, uh, just be aware that the only way to monetize me is through Substack, a subscription, or through buying me a coffee. I don't usually do the whole um, super chat gig on YouTube because entropy is a pain in the ass to set up, and I'm just technically incompetent enough where it's a pain, and I just don't want to deal with it. So anyway, any of your comments are going to be read out live without any censorship on my part, pretty much, except for really egregious things. So first one, we've got the nameless one says, "Congratulations with a." Why on earth would you send that many freaking emojis? Why? What? So how many emojis is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Count with me, children. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so it looks like it's about 30. Well, why? Just excessive. Excessive amounts of emojis, I say. But anyway, thank you for your comment. I appreciate the congratulations there, nameless one. All right, Solid Snake 1964. Yes, an excellent follow. Yes, I believe we have met actually, Solid Snake. So this is good. Yes. Yes. Salute from the Home Range Society. What's the origin of your username and profile pic? Well, that's an easy question to answer, right? So I am, as many people who have been following on me and have interacted with me in real life or on Twitter, I am a gigantic BattleTech fan. I love BattleTech. BattleTech is something I got into about 10 or 12 years ago. Actually, yeah, about 12 years ago now. Oh my gosh. So old. Back in 6th edition 40K, when that whole thing collapsed. And basically, like Matt Ward back in the day, there was a lot of codex creep for Warhammer. Woke hadn't really come to full fruition yet, but Games Workshop was beginning to do some of the dumb things that they have done. Their business decisions don't make a huge amount of sense. Like this is back in the days of things like Finecast, which for those who don't play Warhammer, this was a gigantically shitty model resin that essentially like there were bubbles in the casts, and they broke. And so whenever you were playing with your Warhammer models and your buddy dropped, a tape measure or something on your models, they would just break into pieces, and it was awful. So it's impossible to paint them because you have a piece that just snapped off for no reason at all, and yeah, you ruin your paint job. So after I decided that I was done with 40K, I mean, there was more Matt Ward stuff, which is the codex creep, the rules creep. Every new codex basically changes the meta of 40K, and just every single rules that edition that they come out with means that they change the rules to force you to change the models, right? I think the most recent example with Warhammer is the inclusion for Space Marines of Primaris, and Um, the joke about Primaris is that they are a space marine within a space marine, but uh, the thing is, it's just and it's the same thing too with their resizing of models, right? Back in the day, a model for a space marine was not that much larger than an Imperial Guardsman, and they have rescaled their models to the heroic size. I think they technically call it. It's still 28 millimeter, but it's a slightly larger model to make a space marine actually look bigger by a you know substantive margin over the Imperial Guards and the actual human soldiers in universe. So this is just basically Games Workshop's monetization strategy, and essentially what they to come to the answer to the question, I was just that all of that shit rubbed me the wrong way, and I was just done. And so one of my buddies got me into BattleTech. He's been on my channel before. His name is H Hour. He was the original player who got me into BattleTech after 40K collapsed. And there are a couple different factions for 40K. The first one is Inner Sphere. The second one, or excuse me, not 40K, BattleTech. The first one is Inner Sphere, and the others are Clan. And the clans are the first faction that I got into. Now, the reason why I chose there are several different subcategories, sub-factions within the main faction, right? But there are the Fire Mandrill clan, which is the actual source of the avatar. This is the actual in-game avatar for the Fire Mandrill clan. It's their totem. It's their emblem, you might say. I don't use this on Twitter or in some other places just because, I want to avoid copyright infringement, and this channel is nothing, so I don't care. But the actual Fire Mandrills have a mech that is a totem mech, which is called the Mandrill. Now, that mech is a long-range fire support missile mech, and I decided to re-engineer that mech to something totally different, to completely change the concept to a short-range, fast, Alpha Striker, basically. And so we decided to rename that the Raging Mandrill. And so hence, that is the origin of my username and profile pic. So that is a very long story, but I hope that gives you an idea of my personal background. I have a very nerdy personal life. I enjoy nerd stuff, right? Like I've literally been here since Gamergate. So yes, indeed, gamers rise up. That is the way of things. And yes, let's see. The Nameless One. LOL, we do that a lot when we celebrate in No White Guilt Lives. Okay. XD at DD. Okay. Solid Snake has also Chongrats. He also says, as far as I know, we haven't met in person unless I'm being retarded. I thought we had, but maybe we have not. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else who goes by Solid Snake. I imagine, given the prevalence and popularity of Metal Gear Solid, that that name or username is probably pretty popular, Solid Snake. So I might be thinking of somebody else. In any case, North Sea says, good day. Thank you, North Sea. I don't think I have interacted with you before on my channel, but welcome. I very much like the, I think that looks like an R1B distribution map, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that's an excellent avatar in any case. Aramaic Discourse says, salute from OGC Tel Aviv. Why are you in Tel Aviv? We don't have any chapters in Tel Aviv. Get out. Go. Just banned. I'm serious. I'm gonna ban you. All right. Anyway, let's see. Yes. North Sea says correct. Excellent. Good. Well, my Twitter autism is not for nothing. I get niche esoteric trivia knowledge. So amazing. Good for me. It's not totally useless. All right. Let's see. Well, I suppose I should give everybody an update now that we have a decent audience here about what's going on with my channel, what I'm doing recently. Right. So I've been very inactive on this channel and on my Substack for quite some time, and there's a reason for that. And I've been acquiring some education, you might say, getting a certification. I won't go into too much detail, but I'm basically completed with that now, and I just got a new job. It's not what I want, but at least I can meet my financial obligations now. The last 2 years have been, you know, whirlwind, two and a half almost actually, 2 years and 8 months. And like it's the finally having a consistent source of income is excellent. So yes, unfortunately, I will not have as much time as I probably did a couple of years ago to do content creation, but it's fine. Sometimes you just have to address the budgetary concerns. But as far as the stream is going, I kind of wasn't really planning on doing one. I was very close on Twitter to getting to 2K for a while. Like I've been at 1,900 followers plus for at least a year, I think. So it's been a long time coming, and I mean, I'm just surprised that 2,000 people follow me on Twitter. Like I post nothing on there. I'm like a top tier reply guy, I guess, most of the time. But for some reason, I have some like very important people in the right wing Twitter scene who follow me for some reason. I have no idea why. Um, but anyway, let's see. High Powered says R.I.P. Gothic Bad Boy King Cobra JFS. I don't what the heck is that supposed to mean? High Powered. Is that if that's a reference? I don't know, man. Like, is that like a weird 40K reference that I don't understand? Anyway, is this supposed to like? Is this like the catchphrase that you're going to use so that you put my voice into AI and then you know oh, okay. Some YouTuber died. Oh, excellent. Well, I have no idea who that is. Um, oh, I think maybe somebody was passing around a clip of him earlier on Twitter. Yeah, I didn't ever engage with him. I don't even know who that is. But anyway, just goes to show you, even on the internet, how clicky things can be. Yes, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, high powered says no, a lol count. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, many such cases. It's an unfortunate reality of um, the internet. It seems, you know, I, I like to quote one of the Christopher Nolan movies. You either, I think it's Batman Begins or something, where it's like you either die a hero or you live to see yourself become a villain. Well, the right wing Twitter version of that is you either die a hero or you live to see yourself become cringe. And it seems that that is absolutely true. You either become cringe, a lol cow, or you fade into obscure irrelevance. Hopefully, fading into obscure irrelevance will be the fate of some of the people in our circles. I would rather see them leave and never be spoken to or spoken of again rather than see them embarrass themselves. But personally, that's my preference. Let's see, what else can I talk about? I think there's some other things that are on my mind right now. The biggest thing is just seeing how absolutely corrupt the job market is. Like I wrote an article a couple months back when I was, initiating, the first section of my job search, just talking to like, counselor people and that sort of thing about, hey, what should I do? What's the latest and greatest tactics for how to apply for jobs? And the the HR people will tell you, oh well, you just need to make a resume for every single position that you apply for. Same thing for cover letter. And I'm like, what? That doesn't even make fucking sense, right? I mean, this little interview that I had with an HR lady got me so fired up that I even wrote an article for the OGC Substack about it. It just made me so fucking livid. And Um, it's just you're filling out the same information three times. Like this is a consistent point that I have, and I tell people this as often as I can. It's it's the most Soviet bureaucratized thing possible. I read an article yesterday about this subject, and it's interesting to see some of these things begin to percolate into the mainstream, even amongst very high-powered people. And the blame is now beginning to fall on HR, right? Which is good, right? It's good that the normies are beginning to identify where the root causes of things are beginning to come from. That's not precisely the root cause, but everybody understands that HR is the problem. Yes, High Power says, congrats on the job. Thank you, sir. Charlemagne says, are you an Indian? Charlemagne, really? Really? Of course I'm not an Indian. What is this like? Are you asking me to be a performing monkey for you and to give you an Indian accent? Is that what this is? I mean, I can do one if you want. I mean, but other people have done it better. It's like, oh yes, oh yeah, okay. There wasn't a question mark attached to that. You didn't have a question. Hmm. Anyway, yes, but the jobs thing is completely frustrating, and it's just very interesting to see that like there's no other option than to attack HR, right? I want HR ladies to feel the pain, and everybody knows it's not HR, right? HR is there as a compliance office, like that's their only purpose. They're just a bureaucrat, right? They're just doing what they've been educated and told their entire lives to do. Um, let's see. Do we have any other questions? What else are we talking about today? Hmm. Yes, I think I should probably also say, since Charlemagne is here, everybody who is in the chat right now should go check out the stream I did on Charlemagne's channel about the Ukraine war. We did a bit of an update on that. And, that's the other kind of hobby horse that I have in the back of my mind at the moment. This is a consistent thing that's been going on for the last like 2.5, 3 years. And it's just that's the slow rolling happening you know, uh, that's going on. Yeah, High Powered says doing their best to keep the company from getting sued. Well, High Powered, it's very interesting because just today, I had my new boss essentially was telling us during the training that there was an incident in the locality where he had somebody other guy who was working for this firm, and it's basically going around knocking on doors and trying to do sales rep stuff. And he basically ended up knocking on the door of some kind of like local Democrat, party apparatchik type, but relatively high level one. And this person like was going through their little like sales spiel, and got to the point where they wanted to collect information and asked for their spouse's number, and basically did the misgendering thing. And so this person threw a whole hullabaloo about it, and that person got called into the office. The company sent an Uber to go pick them up. They got brought back to the office in an Uber and fired that day. That was just absolutely surprising that that was the case. Because honestly, I'm sure that if that person had any sort of support financially or otherwise, they probably could have won a wrongful termination suit, and or at least gotten the company to settle. And the thing about these wrongful termination suits over progressive social causes is you really have to start making them pay, right? These companies don't think that anybody is going to do anything to them. They don't ever pay any sort of consequences for anything, so they just figure, oh, it's best to signal early on and to signal often how on board they are with progressive social causes. And so you know, other than enforcement, there's no way to actually get these people to either change their mind or you change the incentives, right? That's the only way that you're going to be able to get this stuff to actually change. And changing the incentives is harder. It takes a lot longer, but it is more effective. Whereas changing people's mind, you have to understand a bit of salesmanship, I guess, and that's tough for autists, unfortunately. Mhm. Let's see. Yeah. So in other news, back to BattleTech. I've done some more painting for my BattleTech stuff. That's amazing. I have not had time to do any hobby things for the last like year and a half. Um, I've just had so much to do. And other than the work on that I've had to do to get this certification and job stuff and working for the OGC and doing random bits of content here and there just to keep things uh, moving without being too lazy, I guess, or letting the ball drop in too much in one area. I haven't had any time for hobby stuff, so it's been really nice to just get back and do hobby things. Um, I have. Let's see, I have one battle mech in front of me, but he is broken at the moment. It's a Crimson Hawk. I don't have a picture of it, but anyway. Charlemagne says there is a co-op BattleTech game on Sega Genesis. I'll bring it next time we hang out. Is that Mech Warrior by any chance? Is that like the original Mech Warrior? It would not surprise me if it was. Um, yeah, because I have the Mech Warrior 5, right? Um, so I know Mech Warrior Clans just came out. I think Not Me, Not You actually picked that up recently, but I haven't had a chance to play it. Like, I haven't had a chance to play Mech Warrior 5 even to conclusion. Like, I've had no time for hobby, no time for games other than like a couple of um, you know things with OGC members. But anyway, um, BattleTech, a game of armored combat. Yeah. Okay. Okay. It's probably in the same universe, I would imagine, especially if it's Sega Genesis. It's early '90s, so definitely in era. Definitely in era. With Ukraine, High Powered says, with Ukraine, what are the chances of a ceasefire or peace in the next year? I'd say zero, unless Ukraine gets totally fucking steamrolled. That is my professional opinion. There just needs to be grinding attrition and total Ukrainian collapse before peace happens. The issue with narrative crafting is, at least from the Ukrainian perspective, is now Russia has proven that they can take any piece of territory, not just any city, any piece of territory. And even with Ukrainian localized counterattacks, the Russians will likely be able to hold on to that territory. This changes the entire dynamic of the war because it basically says, regardless of cost, Russia will continue to make forward progress and momentum, and the Ukrainians cannot recapture anything that the Russians take. So it just changes the entire calculus, right? It just makes everybody look at the situation and understand that Ukraine is losing the war. Basically, there's no more cope to be had. So yeah, that's my comment on Ukraine. Let's see. Like I even haven't had a chance to read like political books either recently. I think the last one I read, which was like actually political, might have been one of Spengler's books. Yeah, I think that was the last one. I think it was The Hour of Decision is the last actual like politics book I read. Um, these days, I've kind of started to delve more into the realm of ideas rather than the hard politics. I find that I need to take a break from political theory every so often and read other things, like read just general history or read a fantasy or science fiction novel or philosophy, just anything other than politics. And the reason for this is it helps to keep it fresh. You need to keep um, you don't want to have burnout, basically. If you have burnout, then you're doing something wrong. You've overworked yourself too much for too long, and that's not good. um, is there any other questions that people have? Anything else I could answer? Any curious things? What books are everybody else reading? I think that's probably a good question to ask. Nothing. No comments. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm just going to keep rambling on then. Yeah, yeah. I know Charlemagne is doing some excellent hard work for American Spirits. Everybody should go check that series stream out. By the way, um, it is it is excellent for solidifying and setting a foundation for your knowledge of America in general. And in addition to actually watching those streams, you probably should read those books as well, especially Albion's Seed. That one is pretty seminal. Yeah, Charlemagne says, I just finished Andrew Roberts' Napoleon A Life, and he says he highly recommends that particular book. Yeah, I've also been on a bit of a Napoleon bender myself. I was binge watching, I think it's Kings and Generals, Kangs and Generals. It's either them or History March. I get those two channels confused. But High Power says I'm illiterate. Well, not every there's a place for illiterate grease monkeys on the right wing internet sphere. You have your purpose. But yeah, unfortunately for people who like to read, yeah, and nobody reads. That is the joke, and it's true. Like nobody reads anything. I don't read, and I couldn't possibly read everything that gets posted on the OGC Substack. Unfortunately, it is a crime because I'm sure there are a lot of bangers that just don't get the attention. But such is life, such is how it goes when you have too many friends and too many amazing posters. Um, oh, now that's interesting. That is very interesting. No More Napoleons, and he says it's a book about how Britain managed Europe after Napoleon. Well, that sounds like it would be up my alley because you're getting pretty much directly into the Great Game era of politics. Um, yeah, and it wasn't very shortly long afterwards that the British put Napoleon onto Elba, where they started messing around with Russia and Crimea. So yeah, that the whole 19th century is just interesting from the British point of view. Just being a gigantically wealthy, great power with a world-spanning empire kind of does things to a country, and its relations to its neighbors. Aramaic Discourse says, just picked up the Cultured Thug Handbook. Going to start reading it tonight. Which non-political theory books have stuck out to you? Okay, now that's an interesting question. And I think that you have to qualify that with a modifier. You have to give me a subject matter. For example, which non-political theory books in terms of what? Are we talking like novels? Are we talking like history? Are we talking philosophy? What? All of the above, I suppose. Um, yeah, I mean, a cultured thug handbook is I'm sure excellent because that's all based off of Bowden's idea of the cultured thug, and um, the problem with those kinds of boilerplate books, I say that's boilerplate even though it's like 500 plus pages. I did look into picking it up, but I just couldn't because it's a summation of everything that we've heard already, right? If you're somebody who's already deep into Spengler, or you've read Heidegger, or you've had exposure to Nietzsche on some podcast or whatever, you've probably already heard everything that you know Mike from Imperium Press has got to say. So I tend not to pick up those ones anymore. Let's see. But as far as actually answering your question, I think the biggest non-political theory books. I mean, obviously, Alan de Benoit is incredibly influential on me. His book on being a pagan is probably the most influential, just given personality and the intellectual pathway I found myself on. Um, that's philosophy. In terms of history, like I haven't really read a huge amount of history books recently. The one I'm reading right now is I think David Fisher's History of the Christian Conversion, the Barbarian Conversion, I think it's called. That was one that George Bagby sold me a while ago, actually, like 3 conferences ago, and it's been sitting on my shelf. I'm halfway through it now. That too is yet another 500 plus page book, and it's very, very dry. And I don't like the overly verbose writing style, but it is very useful because that is European history, that is our history, and it is things that you should be aware of. In any case, you should be historically literate, definitely. Let's see. So, yeah, and I just haven't had time to read any novels whatsoever, to be honest. So, yeah, unfortunately. The Panther Awakens says, what the hell is a littoral combat ship and why do they suck? Right, so a littoral combat ship... Well, this is a bit of a joke question because the real answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows what a littoral combat ship is. Why do they suck? Well, this comes back to the first question, because both the classes of littoral combat ship, the Independence and Freedom classes, both were designed during the Obama era, largely by committee. And this is an example of being a little bit too experimental, a little too soon. I mean, the fact that you have two classes of the same type of ship tells you one thing, because in warfare construction, at least for ship construction, you don't build experimental platforms to the tune of 40 or 50 warships. That's not how you do that, right? The Chinese and the Russians have this weird thing. They do what we used to do with battleships. They would build a single class of 2 ships in a class, or maybe 3. That's it. And then you take the lessons learned from that class and you apply those lessons learned to any sort of technological changes or improvements, modifications, or whatever, and you apply those to the next class of ship. It's still the same type of warship, but you're just giving subtle improvements for it. So that's one or two reasons for why the LCS suck. Now, on a technical level, the LCSs have many, many, many problems. Number one, they're made completely out of aluminum, right? This is a huge problem for warship construction, not just because aluminum is completely inappropriate for warship construction, simply because it's taking material that could be used for aircraft. So what happens if you get an aluminum shortage? Oh, now you're screwed for both ships and aircraft. So that's the first thing. The second thing is ships oftentimes will catch on fire when they go to sea and go into war on the high seas. Aluminum has a lower melting point than steel, I think by several hundred degrees, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a huge problem. And in fact, there is a naval warship called the USS Belknap, the BLKNAP, which you can go look up, by the way. It's a famous warship. It's been named after a famous either Secretary of the Navy, I believe, or Admiral. I think it's Secretary of the Navy. Yeah, I think so. But basically, that was an old cruiser in the 1960s or early 70s, got into a collision with an Australian ship, or was it an Australian ship? Some kind of ship. Um, I think I'm confusing a couple of different incidences here. But anyway, essentially caught on fire. The entire superstructure burned to the waterline, right? Um, so it was made of entirely aluminum superstructure, and the hull was basically steel, right? So everything that was above the freeboard, which is everything above like the main deck of the ship, right? That all basically burned, all of it melted. So you could just and the Ticonderoga class cruisers are constructed the same way, but they do that for stability reasons, and they understood that as like a necessary like compromise for construction. But yeah, the LCSs are completely aluminum, and they're very thin, right? They have extremely thin holes if you get to actually look up one up close. So I mean, even in comparison to like DDGs or cruisers, like it's ridiculous. They have smaller guns, although the 57 millimeter Bofors gun is quite useful for what it's intended to shoot at, mostly small craft. It's very rapid. It's an excellent gun. Like usual, the Swedes designed the Bofors because that's a Swedish company, but it's good. Like the reason the LCSs suck is when they initially came out with them, they didn't design them to carry an anti-ship cruise missile, right? So you have to like bolt on an entire rack of Harpoon missile launchers, right? And those things are like hundreds of pounds a piece, but not even counting the launcher itself or any of the additional electronics. So the problem with like that is you can see why it just sucks automatically. Oh, and I should probably mention the engineering plant, right? The engineering plant was particularly egregious, right? There's several different ship engineering plant configurations, and I'm not an engineer by trade, so take what I have with a grain of salt on it. But normally on cruisers and destroyers, the mainstay workhorse platforms of the Navy, you have what's basically called COGAG, right? Combined gas and gas, right? So you have gas turbines, which are attached to a main reduction gear. And then you also have separate gas turbines, which are used to attach to another turbine yet again, or another reduction gear yet again, which are actually powering, the 60 hertz ship's power, basically. So what the LCSs did is they tried to have this weird fucking configuration bullshit where you had combined like fucking, what was it? It was like a combined turbine and diesel engine battery thing. It's fucking stupid. And of course, these things like had engineering problems. They broke down a lot, so that a lot of them just could never get underway because of engineering issues. It's just too complex. And if you're going to go experimental, one of the things that you can do is you can do what the U.S. Navy is doing with the FFG 62, the upcoming Constellation frigate, and they are you basically mitigate any experimentation risk by doing this in a controlled environment, right? You build the engineering plant in a building in Arizona or something, right? And you run it there to see what all of the problems are, and so you can like op test it beforehand, right? Testing proof of experimentation, of experimental concept. That wasn't done for the LCS, right? And that's fucking wild. That is an incredible fucking oversight, right? It's just, I mean, this is just not done ever. Like you always fucking test what you're building. But anyway, the entire point of the LCS is that it was a jobs program, mostly for the ironworks in Louisiana and Maine and in Wisconsin. Right, there's a reason why they build so many of them, and why they built two classes, because they wanted some on the East Coast and some needed to be built on the West Coast, and it was just a fucking fustercluck. But let's see. I let's see. The Nameless One says, I had started Welsh history, strange but true, by G.F. Brooks, but didn't get far into it before I put it down for a while. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't know very much about Welsh history other than a little bit of Owain Glyndŵr, and only because that relates to Henry V's story, and of course that's English history. Let's see. Oh yeah, Charlemagne says, I haven't started it yet. You should pick it up too. Okay, perfect. I will look into it. Yes. Armag Discourse says, novels like sci-fi or fantasy. Okay, so actually, I want to read our good friend Semiagog's Vinculum. He actually is a published writer of all things, in addition to his many other works that he has done. That seems like an interesting concept. It's about a book thief in Istanbul, or Constantinople, you might say. And I mean, I think he lived in Turkey for several years of his life, so that I believe influenced his concept for a book. But anyway, yes, I'm interested in reading that one. That's the only real fantasy or sci-fi thriller book that I have on my shelf at the moment. All of the other ones are ones that I've already read, because mostly they're Warhammer ones. But anyway, Solid Snake says, I haven't been to the OGC convention yet, but hope to attend in the next few years. Well, we'll see about that. We shall see. Yes. Shawnee Max says, congrats on 2K. Thank you, sir. He also says, are any John D space guests coming on the show tonight? Well, unfortunately, I do have work tomorrow morning. I am a wagey again, so I will not be attending, most likely. Let's see. Yiz the Eunuch says, dropping by to say congrats on the 2K. Thank you, Yiz. Appreciate you dropping by as always. Always welcome on this channel. I think I should probably send you a DM about my new schedule, because my Mondays are actually now free for the foreseeable future, at least until I can land a different job. So yes, that means I am available for Discorded Dragons. So please bring me on again. High Powered says, I am curious how terrified the U.S. Navy is with Russian and Chinese hypersonic missiles. Most modern ships can't take hits. Yes, that is absolutely correct. They are terrified of these things. Mostly, they're not. The hypersonic missiles are less important for the naval warfare and naval combat. Mostly what they're concerned about is the ballistic missiles. Like, what on earth? What is happening to my audience count? Like, everybody's leaving. But anyway, the ships that they have, especially in the Philippines, if they or like Japan, especially, that's where they have the home port. Like, those are ballistic missiles, right? So you can ostensibly have a carrier home ported in Yokosuka, and the Chinese will just launch a couple of ballistic missiles. They happen to get through the Japanese. The U.S. Navy or the Japanese cannot reasonably home port capital ships in the first island chain, right? You can't put them in Japan. You can't put them in Taiwan. You can't put them anywhere. That's a huge deal, which means that you have to go thousands of miles to the east, to the second island chain, in order to contain China. Containing China is essentially similar to containing Japan, although there has been an increase in other forms of containment, like the Andaman Islands are one place. This is why India is actually of interest to be slightly friendly to, and if conflict were to ever occur. And then also there are, like, that's the fourth island, or the third island chain technically. And then the fourth and fifth island chains are in the Nicobar Islands by India and Madagascar. And Eritrea, I think, or no, wait, not Eritrea, Somalia, excuse me. But Yeah, that's basically what the United States is the like thalassocratic long-term strategy is in global terms, and how we're trying to contain China. It could work if you're basically trying to cut off the shipping lane between China and any sort of friendly Middle East power or neutral Middle Eastern power, to prevent the Chinese from getting access to oil. That's just what that whole thing is all about. But yeah, the hypersonic missiles, less concerning, much more concerning for the Navy, at least as of like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, was the ASCMs. That is the anti-ship cruise missiles. The Chinese have access, because they have several of the old Soviet platforms. That means that they have compatibility with the old Soviet missiles, and the old Soviet missiles are excellent. They are top-notch, top-tier missiles. Right. This is when you start getting into military autism. It's a classic weapons versus armor battle. Right. This is a classic military strategy, tactics formulation. You have somebody create a better weapon, and then somebody creates the armor that is able to mitigate the usage of that weapon, and then somebody comes up with a slightly better modification of the weapon, which just nukes the use of the armor. Well, that's kind of what the Russians and the Chinese have basically been doing. Is the United States' carrier strategy has been based upon the Ticonderoga class cruiser and the Arleigh Burke destroyer as a screening element around the carrier. And basically, um, the great problem with all of this, these missiles, is right. You're essentially like, the missiles are damn good. I'm not going to lie. The United States is, and NATO by extension, is getting better, but they're not, at least with the new missiles that I've seen and done slight research into, like using open source data. The NASAMS is nowhere close to being nearly as good as some of the old Soviet era missiles in terms of like capability. Um, but it's not even the Soviet missiles that are the problem, right? It's the new stuff, just because they're so cheap, so prevalent, and we've seen this even with drone warfare. It's a similar deal, right? How do you beat somebody's armor? Well, there's only so many, uh, cells in your VLS rack, right? So you just like launch more missiles than somebody has in their VLS rack. You launch more missiles than they can deal with CIWS, and then now it's that one or two missiles is going to get through, and then your ship is a dead ship, right? This is just how it does. Shawnee Mac says, "Is the pagan thing a meme, or are you a druid?" No, I am a member of the Osachu Folk Assembly. I'm not a druid. Succession Wars era Black Knight or Orion would you use in battle? Well, personally, I prefer the Black Knight over the Orion. The Orion has a mixed weapons complement. It's got like the long range weapons, because it's got the LRM and the large laser, I believe, and then a couple of the more short range lasers. But the Black Knight, I think I would prefer, just because if you're going to take a heavy mech, you might as well, and it's not a dedicated fire support mech, you might as well take a brawler. You might as well have the ability to deal lots of damage in close quarters. And my favorite Succession Wars era Inner mech is actually a grasshopper. I love the grasshopper. That's and the Black Knight has a very similar profile, but it's like 5 tons heavier, of course. So the Black Knight by hands down, just way better. Solid Snake 1964 says, "If you could meet anyone alive or dead, who would you meet?" Now that is an interesting question. Well, am I allowed to say that one on YouTube? I don't know. Let's see. I'm. This is difficult, right? Because you never want to meet your heroes. There's a reason why your heroes are that way, why people idolize others, and um, I don't think I would ever want to meet someone, to be honest. But if I could meet someone, um, like maybe just to shake their hand, I mean, uh, hmm. I mean, yeah, definitely Trump. Obviously, like he's a force of nature, so of course I'd want to meet him. Um, I'm trying to think of somebody who'd be like a less obvious choice, like somebody who's like a little more off the beaten path. Hmm, hmm. Gosh, this is a tough question, actually. Hmm. I don't have anyone coming immediately to mind. I might have to think about that one because networking is not my forte, and so meeting people and making these kinds of connections is not something that I'm particularly interested in. My Myers Briggs type is INTJ, so of course introversion is my nature, and meeting people is just exhausting to me. Um, let's see. He says you haven't thought about it that way. That interesting, yeah. Aaron Wolf 99 says, I prefer the Black Knight as it's my favorite mech, or a Centurion. Okay, interesting. A Centurion is a good choice. Um, yeah, see, I ask people what is their favorite Inner Sphere medium mech. And the reason why I do that is because Inner Sphere um, medium mechs are workhorses in the actual like gameplay. And the tech base is so low, especially in the Succession Wars era, that you have to make design compromises, and so you can't have it all. Like in later eras with XL engines and all of the weight saving technology, like Endosteel chassis and all of that bullshit, um, you basically can get everything that you want. You can have speed, you can have armor, you can have all of the guns. Whereas in the Succession Wars, you have to choose. And so you can choose to be fast, you can choose to be armored, you can choose to have a decent weapons complement. And the Centurion is just basically an all around mech, right? It's got an average speed profile or a lower than average speed profile for a medium mech. It has decent armament, it's got, armor, so good survivability. Um, and so it's a good choice. Like, it's a good choice. But it's not my choice. My favorite is the Kintaro, actually, which is a very, very obscure and overlooked and underutilized mech because in universe it is very rare. So people tend to overlook it because they haven't, actually seen it used in the video game, or they haven't, they're just unaware of it. Let's see. Shawnee Mack says, "Do you follow any of the major pro sports leagues?" No, I do not. I used to follow the NFL. I was really big into football in high school and college, and of course, after I got out of college, you had about a year where I was still watching my college team or still caring about them, but didn't really have time to keep up with it just because of job considerations and that sort of thing. And the yeah, like so I just kind of naturally fell out of it. But yeah, like I was originally introduced to football in 2006 because I was watching with my dad, who was a massive Steelers fan originally. So I am, or I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan for a bit, and I was watching their 2006 Super Bowl run, which was kind of legendary because it's a classic, like, wild card, has to win every game, has to win the last game of their season to actually make it to the wild card slot, wins that game against their division rival, goes on to beat every single other team, and then goes to win the Super Bowl, after the playoffs. So yeah, that is probably the most memorable part of football that I had. And of course, I did do like, you know other things in college. So I was interested in my college team because they were a winning team. I did go to my school simply because, or for one reason, because they had a winning team. Um, anyway, let's see. Aaron Wolf says, oh, sorry, Solid Snake 1964 says drink of choice. Now, if we're talking like just casually, I'd say beer probably. I, you know, Shiner Bock is a great choice. Yingling is a great choice. Um, I think those are great choices in terms of like widely available commercial beer. I do like Rolling Rock a lot too in terms of beer. Very very light, very easy drinking. Although it's well, kind of obscure, right? Because it's like very very cheap. But that's why it's good because it tastes good and it is cheap. So, but if we're talking mixed drinks, I do like a good gin and tonic. I do like mules. I like vodka um, mixed with fruit juice, that sort of thing. I drank a lot of rum in college, and that was probably a bad decision. So tend to avoid rum these days. I tend to avoid tequila as well. Although tequila sunrises are nice, but yeah, I don't drink those anymore. They're too sweet. Let's see. Aaron Wolf says he likes a Centurion with the large laser and more armor specifically. Yeah, yeah. Of course, once you get to SLDF variants and that sort of thing, that's very nice. I was using a Thunderbolt the other day against a Bungo Man. Actually, we had a bit of a matchup, and I was using a Thunderbolt, and um, I mean, it's just a great mech. Like I mean, wonderful, wonderful mech. Oh wait, yeah, and anyway, so the SLDF variant specifically is awesome. I love those mechs. Like, there's just too many good mechs, right? There's too many. He says a 55-ton Centurion would be better. Honestly, I don't know. Kintaro is an interesting choice. Yeah, like I said, the Centurion is a good mech. I respect it. I respect its capabilities, but it's not my choice. It's not my playstyle. So anyway, uh, Solid Snake says two of my favorite beers. Personally, he's big whiskey and Scotch dry. Drank neat. Okay, yeah, I don't particularly like whiskey. I don't like how it burns on the way down. I mean, it tastes okay. I'd honestly prefer vodka or any of the clear spirits, to be honest, but that's me. Um, let's see. Ardent Party says, congratulations, getting ready for my own fandom Friday shortly, but what is your favorite pop culture IP and why? Ardent Party, come on, it's Warhammer 40k. It's Warhammer, man. Come on. Come on. Like, I mean, other than BattleTech, of course, but yeah, like anything tabletop, right? Tabletop is the best IP, right? Um, anyway, yeah, I'm very happy that Games Workshop has decided to come out with a new version of Fantasy that isn't like a corruption, right? But the problem with Warhammer: The Old World is that it's obviously a siloed game, right? Games Workshop realized they fucked up with Age of Sigmar. They know that their sales numbers are down, and they realize that, oh, our like even our strategy of trying to get new players by dumbing down the rules isn't really working, right? And it's obviously clear why they're doing that. Like, even BattleTech came out with um, a variant of their game called Alpha Strike, which is a streamlined, simplified variant of the rules. And like, it's clear that that's obviously so you can get the lower IQ populations playing your game. And no, tabletopping is for white people. Sorry. And anyway, so but yeah, like, it's good that they're doing that, but I'm very upset that they probably will not come out with any of the legendary heroes, or at least that's the rumor that I'm hearing, because I really wanted to buy a plastic model um, of Archeon the Everchosen. So yes, I didn't have him as a child. I couldn't buy big models like that And so yeah, I want to buy like those kinds of models where they're like mid range are my favorite to paint. Actually, I love those. The like dreadnoughts, demon princes, those sorts of like not gigantically monstrous creatures, not tanks. Like if it's the size of a tank, I'm out because it takes like three coats of painting to get an even layer, right? If you're painted by hand, and I'm old school, so I don't do any of that airbrushing shit, even though it probably would be easier for those like very flat surfaces just to do like spray paint. But yeah, but Warhammer definitely. I mean, the problem with Warhammer Fantasy is it's siloed, right? Everybody's got their little siloed IP, and the same thing goes um, for what's the 40k version of that? Oh yeah, 30k, right? The Heresy, basically. That's also kind of siloed into its own little thing. It's very expensive. Like Games Workshop is just way too expensive. Like their models are very high quality for a reason. They're top of the market, right? But yeah, I mean the problem with that though is like when you go into any game store, who are they competing with for models? They're not competing with like historical war games. That's not who they perceive to be in their market niche for some reason. Whereas the they're competing with like Dungeons and Dragons, which is retarded, right? Like 40k's pageantry, or at least even fantasy's pageantry, any sort of Games Workshop like product is based upon pageantry. So you have the spectacle of this gigantic army of well painted models, right? And fantasy's the same way, where you have like these little blocks of infantry and like the cavalry and stuff and monsters, and like everything is very well painted, and the models look good. But like with D&D, you're playing individual models, right? So the individual models have to be exceptionally detailed. These are single models that you are painting just because it's a cool model, right? This is like the cool mini or not theory of wargaming. Um, and there's a reason why I like the old school fantasy models, because I don't like the new heroic scale Warhammer models. I don't like them at all because I know what they represent. They represent a monetization scheme on Games Workshop's part, but they're also like competing on market terms with a game that is not even in their niche, right? They're in the painting sphere, but really, how many people play Warhammer because they're painting? Like, it's not about the painting; it's about the pageantry. It's about the lore, which is unique in all, tabletop experiences, in all role playing gaming experiences. It's the only one of its kind, basically. And so it's sad that they're undermining the lore, I should say. Ardent Party says rum is for pirates, not mech jockeys. Damn straight. Aaron Wolf says the Banshee is pretty underrated if you rip out the XL engine. It would give it much more versatility. I mean, I found this with the Kintaro actually. It's surprising how many mechs are like overpowered as fuck if they get one small little like upgrade, right? For the Kintaro, I basically threw in, one box of Inferno rounds. You take out one bin of conventional ammo, put in a bin of Inferno rounds. You have plenty of SRM6 ammo, and then you give it double heat sinks or something, and it just becomes a monster. The thing becomes incredible. It's like, oh, that's just like a 55-ton missile boat thing that doesn't shoot many weapons. Now it fires all of its weapons in a single turn and is cold, basically. That's very terrifying. That becomes a threat to mechs that are like 3 times its size. I should say twice its size. Solid Snake 1964 says, have you been to Kansas before? If you're passing through, I'm sure me and the rest of the Home Range Society would love to show you around. Lots of history here in Kansas, even old tunnels. I don't believe I have properly visited Kansas. I have no reason to be up there, honestly, at least not at the moment. I would like to visit, though. I hear they have good hunting grounds up in Kansas, so I would be interested in doing something like that, honestly. I have an excellent whitetail deer rifle, or an excellent deer rifle that I need to use. and I haven't. That's the other thing too. Like I have so much to do and too little time for hobbies. So like you know, I don't even have time to go to the range anymore. Like I haven't been to the gun range in like a year and a half. It's so ridiculous. Um, anyway, uh, Solid Snake once again says that those tunnels were built under small far towns that hosted business and kept people out of the heat. Wild West era stuff. I mean, that's an interesting innovation, I suppose. I wonder. I wonder. There are certain groups which do tunneling other than people in New York. Hmm. Iron Wolf 99 says, no matter the weight class, I'd run energy and missiles on the offensive, while using autocannons on defense, as you can more readily supply it on home turf, especially during the Succession Wars. Okay, now this is very interesting because now you're getting into campaign play. Most of the games that I would play are, pickup games, one-off games, and I have played campaign before, and you will find that when you play against human players, even ones that are like, you know, playing op4, is like they players act far more conservatively when real damage is on the line, right? If they are playing a one-off game, oh sure, I'll send my, like, you know, single mech or whatever into close quarters with a guy who's like, outclassing him, outgunning and outclassing him, so like that's kind of silly, but of course, like you just find totally different play styles, and I think this is yet another example. Yeah, Solid Snake 1964 says, yeah, lots of deer, especially near where he lives out in the country. Okay, perfect. Well, I will have to make a pilgrimage out there at some point. Yes. Anyway, well, we are over an hour now, so does anyone have any other questions? Any other questions for me? I would prefer not to ramble on for so long. Let's see. Solid Snake says, I promise the tunnels were built of the highest quality by heritage Americans. None of those folk, LMAO, although the old time barbershop would sell used bathwater for 10 cents, new for 15. Ooh, selling the bathwater. I mean, well, uh, well, anyway, let's not go there. Yes, but like I tend not to like these AMA streams because I have a lot of verbal pauses, and it's very difficult to stay on topic. Uh, and if you don't have, it's easier to do if you have somebody else, isn't it? Right? If you have somebody else to bounce ideas off of, then or interrupting you or asking other questions or whatever, or bringing up other ideas, these streams they just have a natural flow to them. Whereas, like answering questions is very disjointed. Are you sure they were only bathing in them? Well, I mean, anyway, let's not go there. Ardent Party says, I like tabletop gaming as well, but my choice RPGs. He just picked up Heroes Unlimited. What's my favorite superhero? Oh, Cape Shit. Cape Shit. I have almost never been into Cape Shit, even when it was like super popular back in the day. Although I'm still residually fond of the old Batman and Superman series, the animated series from the early '90s. I'm this is like super millennial, right? The the I also like Batman Beyond. Like I do really like Batman as a superhero concept. That like this is the idea of an anti-hero, and that's always been rather appealing to me. Uh, like everybody who has a superpower always feels kind of fake, don't they? Right? It's almost like I mean, especially Superman. Like there's a reason why Doc Manhattan is like the inverse version of Superman, or what Superman really would be if he had the level of powers he would have had in real life. But yes, like Hmm. Yeah, so if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Batman. Aaron Wolf 99 says, "What's your favorite light mech? Mine's the Valkyrie or the Firestarter." Okay, well, the Firestarter is an interesting choice. Those little bastards are annoying as hell in MechWarrior 5. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm to blame for this. Okay, I'm using the Kintaro with Inferno rounds. I'm changing the meta now. Everybody's running heat based weapons. I'm sorry, guys. It's my fault. Um, but no, I will say, in terms of Succession Wars era tech, um, probably the Jenner. Um, that was my favorite one in like the old BattleTech box set from the early 2000s. That's the one I'm used to playing in intro like pickup games. Um, I like him because he's fast. He has jump jets. He has decent armament. He, he's 35 tons, so he can punch above his weight when it comes to medium mechs or some medium mechs at least. And I mean, just a really good mean little light mech. Although of course it's unfortunate because the BattleTech IP is very dated, and the Jenner mech is supposedly named after Bruce Jenner, who was an Olympics icon in the 1980s for his track and field skills. So yes, unfortunately, old Brucey there not looking so good these days. But anyway, yes. Oh, Arden Party says LOL or Cape shit adjacent. Well, yeah, okay, so I answered that question, but um, he also says I have a suspicion you may enjoy the movie I am reviewing on Monday. What's that? Which movie? Arden Party says, as a mech fan, I'm shocked you don't like Iron Man or War Machine. Well, I mean, well, but that's the problem with Iron Man though. Iron Man is a dude in a slicked down metal suit, right? It's the problem with Iron Man is and Tony Stark is like it's not actually a mech, right? This is like how do you make a superhero as if you were making, you know, using iPhone technology basically. Like if you're using a higher tech base, right? It doesn't make a huge amount of sense, right? Mechs should be clunky. Technology should be clunky. It takes up space. It is heavy because it is made out of metal. The electronics are made out of metal. There's a famous Twitter clip that goes around where it's an anime clip where somebody is activating their mech, and of course they're pressing all the little buttons and things, and they then grab the joystick and then alternate their hand, and then you see the mech, with its the controls, the actual wings, start to maneuver and go up and down like it's about to do stuff, and it opens all the weapons hatches and then closes them in succession. Like that's what it should look like, right? That's what a mech is to me. So that's an Iron Man just looks like a dude who's wearing a mech as a costume, right? My mech is not your costume, god damn it. So yes, that is my opinion. Ardent Party says Doc Savage from 1975. I'm not familiar with that. Let me look that up. What is that? What is that? The Man of Bronze. Okay, interesting. In 1936, Doc Savage returns to New York City following a visit to his top secret Arctic hideaway, the Fortress of Solitude. He learns that his father has died under mysterious circumstances while exploring the remote interior of the Central American Republic of Hidalgo. While examining his father's personal papers, Doc finds himself the target of an assassination attempt. Doc Savage chases and corners the sniper on the nearby Eastern Cranmore building, but the would-be assassin loses his footing and falls to his death. Upon examining the body, Doc discovers that his assailant is a Native American with peculiar markings. His fingertips are red, as if dipped in blood, while his chest bears an elaborate tattoo of the ancient Mayan god Kukulkan. Returning to his penthouse headquarters, Doc finds that intruders have destroyed his father's personal papers. Vowing to solve his father's murder, Doc Savage flies to Hidalgo with the Fabulous Five. Okay, interesting concept. Yes, thank you. That was a very good answer. I mean, it's basically just cape shit is cape shit, right? That's why I hate cape shit, right? It's just a costume. It's just literally a fucking Halloween costume. There is nothing unique about superheroes in any way, right? Especially the Marvel ones. Which is why they have to use, like, you know, a Motown soundtrack to get people's attention. Which it is still a good soundtrack, right? I still enjoy, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy and all of that. That was actually a decent couple of films, but yeah. Aaron Wolf 99 says, what would be your ideal weight range if you had to make a workhorse mech? 60 tons for me to make a super medium mech in theory. Well, I mean, well, I don't know what super medium mech is. Like, the category ends at 55 there, bro. But, yeah, 60 tons is, I mean, there's a lot of mechs that fit into that category, right? As my buddy H. Hour always loves to say, there is a threshold in between the different mech classes, right? 60 tons is low tonnage enough. It's like right at the bottom threshold of a heavy mech, right? The cutoff point is between 60 and 55. And so, right, it punches a lot of times like a heavy mech, a lot of times, or excuse me, like a medium mech, right? This is the case for mechs like the Dragon. The Dragon is a heavy mech, which is fast, well armored, but it has basically the same armament as a Centurion. So the fact that it's fast is actually to its advantage. But I mean, if I was going to take a clan mech, I mean, there are some very mean clan mechs, like the Vulture. I fucking hate the Vulture because that is a favorite of my buddy H. Hours, and I have played against a Vulture and a Mad Cat and, you know, a light mech. Like, he usually takes about 3 in his forces, so it usually is like Vulture, Mad Cat, and something else. Or like, you know, Shadowhawk, Mad Cat, and something else. But anyway, yeah, so, yeah, 60 tons. Like, the Vulture is an incredibly irritating mech for me to fight. But anyway, yes, if I was to actually answer the question here, I mean, see, like, as an Inner Sphere player, I tend to go for combined arms approach. There is no workhorse. Although if I had to pick one, like a 60-ton, 60-65, my favorite would probably be the Galaglass. But anyway. Let's see. As for medium mechs, as for workhorses, I mean, I'm always a fan of the Trebuchet, but that's a fire support mech. That's not a workhorse. I'm trying to think what other ones that I would enjoy taking. I mean, the Wolverine is great. I love the Wolverine. I do not use the Wolverine often enough, and I need to because I have one now. So yes, the Wolverine is great. The Shadowhawk is great. I love the Shadowhawk, but it is a tad undergunned. So unfortunately, I don't take it very often either, just because that reason. All right, Solid Snake says he's got to head out. All right, good luck, sir. Good to see you. Yes, go get that bread. Go get that overtime. We're all coming up on an hour and 20 minutes here, so any last-minute questions, please get them in now. I think an hour and a half is a pretty reasonable time frame for this kind of stream. I definitely don't want to go over 2 hours. So last minute questions, go. No questions. Have I answered all of your questions to satisfaction then? You're still watching me, so anything else you would like to know? Anything else you would like to coke and joke about? I mean, I could talk about BattleTech all day, Aaron Wolf. If you just want to sit here for another 10 minutes and have me ramble on about BattleTech, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. Aaron Wolf says large laser AC5. I think you're talking about the Wolverine, Succession Wars era Wolverine. That would be large laser, hands down, every time. And the reason for that is because in one-off games, having more ammo is a gigantic liability, right? If I was to take, especially the Thunderbolt, right? The Thunderbolt specifically has this problem because, and also technically the Battlemaster too. Um, Airwolf says, I chose the correct answer. Yes. Insert meme. You chose wisely. Yeah, I find that like especially like mech design for the Succession Wars era, you almost never fight against infantry. You almost never fight against battle armor or vehicles. So machine guns are almost like a pointless weapon in mech versus mech play, right? Just because it does it's the same profile as a small laser, basically, and you might as well just take the small laser because once you're actually in close combat like that, you've probably already taken substantial damage. You've probably already fired off any long range missile ammo you might have. And so you need more short range weapons to shoot. And so, like, taking the extra liability of 200 rounds of machine gun ammo is just, it's not worth it. And the same thing with the AC5 too. It's the exact same combat principle tactically, or design principle, I should say. But yeah. And he also says AC5 is just not worth it compared to a large laser. I mean, yeah, of course, the large laser deals 8 damage. The AC5 only does 5. No brainer. No brainer. I mean, the only consideration is if you were doing heat, but like the Wolverine is largely heat neutral, even with the laser. So, like, it's only going to generate a couple extra heat if you fire most of its or all of its weapons. And even if you do generate too much, you just cycle down one medium laser for a turn, or don't fire, the SRM6 for a turn or whatever, and fire something else. Gosh, I miss BattleTech. I wish I had more time to play. SRM6 or medium lasers? Por qué no los dos? I mean, like, why not both? You need to have lasers to actually breach the armor, and you need to have the SRM6 to get the critical hit chance. So you need both. You need both. And of course, like, you need to do the proper shooting order in the turn as well, because if you fire your mechs that have saturation damage like LRMs, if you fire your mechs that have big punch weapons like autocannon 10s or PPCs or the large lasers, you fire those first in the turn order, and then once you get to the end of the turn, you fire the mechs that have short range weapons like medium lasers and SRM6s. Especially the SRMs, because that's your quick chances. Yes, and you do need more DACA. More DACA is always better. Absolutely. Like, it's so interesting that you say that too, because a lot, like with BattleTech, the tendency is to want to take like several mechs with very big punch guns. And that's really not what you should do. You should take maybe one mech with, like, say, the Hunchback is a prime example, with an AC-20. You take one mech with one big punch gun, and then everybody else has, smaller weapons, right? And you basically use the saturation damage combined from all of the smaller lasers that are spread across two or three mechs, and then the one punch gun basically blows a hole through the rest of the armor. Maybe you've got enough damage in one location that the AC-20 will go internal and go critical. But if not, then he'll largely blow through most of the armor anyway, and then you can get a crit chance with the SRM-6. Earnwolf99 says, all the 3020's upgrades are badly done because of the XL engines. More armor and double heatsinks makes sense to me, at least. Yeah, I don't think I take a lot of mechs from the 3020s. Remind me of a good example off the top of your head of what one of these 3020 mechs are, because I can't remember one off the top of my head. Most of the mechs I tend to play with are either Succession Wars or post-Clan era. Yeah, and the Clan era is interesting too, because the 3050s, once the Inner Sphere actually gets the technology for like all of the different various speed upgrades through XL engines, all the Endosteel chassis, ferrofibrous armor, all of that, they essentially the Inner Sphere doesn't need range, right? Range is less of a factor. So they can afford to continue to hold on to the Inner Sphere tech base because, well, if your movement is like 6'9" or 7'11" or something on a medium mech, well, you don't need to take a lot of long range firepower. That actually happened to me, by the way. H-Hour got a good match in on me probably about a year or so ago, where he was playing Inner Sphere and I was playing the Mandrills on the table. And yeah, he just had more mechs than I did, and he had not a Spectre, a Light Ray. A Light Ray is one of H-Hour's favorite Inner Sphere mechs, and so he was using one of those Light Rays, and basically, totally wrecked me just with speed, which is very, very flabbergasting as a clanner to have happened, because normally against Inner Sphere, you have the speed advantage. Centurion 9D and all the Succession War air mechs is similar upgrades, which doesn't make sense, at least in a strategic sense. Okay, well, yeah, I don't know about that. Like, the lore stuff, that's getting a bit deep for me. My Warhammer lore knowledge is probably far superior to my Battletech knowledge, despite me playing Battletech for much longer. But yeah, like, the actual lore to me doesn't matter so much because it doesn't really change. So, although I did read Twilight of the Clans before I moved about a year and a half ago. So that was a great book, and there are observations to be had about the finale, or the epilogue book, I should say, for the Smoke Jaguar saga. And Blaine Pardoe wrote the last one. He wrote the epilogue, so that's like the 9th book in a series of an original 8-book series. So a very long series. It took me a while to get through all of those. I basically had to binge them. And one of the fascinating insights that he had from the Smoke Jaguar book, and I think that this is probably the reason why he got canceled. The reason why he got canceled, in my view, is because of what he wrote, which is essentially the messaging inside of the book, right? There is a message which basically says, it doesn't matter if we've been defeated. It doesn't matter if we've been absolutely crushed and our culture has been totally like erased, we are still who we are, and that can never be taken away from us. And we will find a way, even if we have to renew our culture in slightly different mold, we will still exist and we will still do great things in the future. And I think that is an incredibly powerful message. I don't think Blaine Pardoe was writing this with full knowledge of modern political context. I've interacted with him on Twitter, actually, at least once. And, well, he seems like a boomer, right? He's just a bit of a normie conservative boomer so like what can you do? But it is interesting that he is writing things that way, right? It's I think that's very fascinating as a message. Aaron Wolf says his battle technology has surfaced because a lot of books aren't great outside of the clan books. Yeah, that's why I don't rely on books. I rely mostly on Sarna.net and Solaris Skunkworks, which you can download, by the way, if you want to understand all the mechs and all their construction rules and all that stuff. So, yes, do that. All right, well, we're at an hour here. Earnwolf gets another comment in. He says, yes, Blaine is a good writer for Battletech. Yes, he is. He is one of the best writers for Battletech, in my view, the best. Although there are some other ones who are up there. Like, I forget who actually wrote the Jade Falcons trilogy. That's an excellent series. If you start anywhere with Battletech in terms of the lore or the novels, you should start with the Jade Falcon trilogy. And Twilight of the Clans, The Blood of Kerensky series is probably the next trilogy that you should get to, because it is the first part of the clan invasion. So just canonically and chronologically, it makes sense to start there. And then you should work your way into the Twilight of the Clans series, because that is the grand finale of the initial clan invasion, right? The first wave of it. So yes, those are excellent books, and they're probably pretty cheap. Like I picked up my buddy H Hour had most of the Twilight of the Clan series. I had to pick up a couple other ones that he didn't have, and like they were like $5 on eBay. So yeah. Anyway, so if there's no further questions, I think we're probably going to call it here. So thank you all for showing up. I appreciate it. Do check out my Substack. Do check out the Old Glory Club and their affiliate links and various areas on the platforms. And of course, you can monetize me by subscribing to my Substack. I should have another article out soon. I'm hoping I can get to it by next Tuesday or so. I need to. It's my Substack is collecting cobwebs once again, and I don't like that. But I think the next one I'm going to have out is a reply article, a very, very long overdue reply article to Mr. Todd Lewis of Praise of Folly fame. And yes, the other place that you can actually monetize me is on Buy Me a Coffee. So if you like me, if you like my work, please go on Buy Me a Coffee and send a couple bucks my way. It does do a lot, right? Any dollar in this economy matters. So yes, please. And I need more espresso, honestly. I'm very low energy, honestly, so more espresso is good. But with all that said, thank you all for showing up. You have a wonderful rest of your Friday evening and a wonderful rest of your weekend. Have a good night.